Francesca is back on Piers Morgan, this time with Dave Smith and a few others, discussing the election now that it's Trump versus Kamala, not Trump versus Biden. And as always with Francesca, there's some absolutely hilarious moments, some factually eye-opening moments, and I thought that we could take some time to look over the best one.
I understand that your Superman does have a kryptonite, which happens to be Black female prosecutors, Tanya Chutkin and Letitia James, Fani Willis, and now, Kamala Harris. But I still think you should just take a win. I love, there's a lot of whining going on and I don't get it. Like, in no world does like a baseball team get to sue another baseball team because like they put in a left-handed relief pitcher instead of a righty and they were prepping for the righty. What's going on?
I never really thought of Trump's history with Black female prosecutors, to be honest, but that's a great way to think of it. I was talking about how Trump now gets to lose to the two things he hates the most, a person of color and a woman, but now we can add a third to the mix because of Francesca, a Black female prosecutor. But also, the putting in a relief pitcher is a good analogy, and Republicans are trying to just prey on the ignorance of how primary voting works to act like this is a coup, because Trump using fraudulent electors, straight up fake electors, and pressuring state officials to subvert your votes in a general election isn't a coup, but this is. No, in reality, when you're voting in a primary, you're voting for delegates picked by the candidate you wrote down, whose only command is to, in the best conscience, reflect the sentiment of voters from their district. Now, Republicans cried for months about how not even Democrats want Biden on the ticket. And honestly, that sentiment kind of rung true through a lot of the Democratic Party. So delegates choosing another candidate but other than Biden is them reflecting the sentiment of the voters from their district. But this is a coup, and they're honestly, again, free to do what they want in a primary. And when you vote for these delegates, you're doing so supposed to. I mean, most people are ignorant to our process, but you're supposed to be doing so knowing that if your candidate that you wrote down drops out or something is to happen to them, those delegates will then make their best judgment at the convention. And that is what's happening. You can't force a candidate to stay in a race just because you voted for him. That is ridiculous. And since Harris was on the Biden ticket that got the votes and is now endorsed by Biden, that is the clear answer for the delegates to make.
Their God Emperor Donald Trump can literally do whatever he wants, and no Republican would ever step out of line to criticize him. No one would step out of line to say you shouldn't be president anymore. And you're so jealous that Democrats actually hold their own accountable. You're so jealous that we'd actually be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't run again.
I assure you, I'm not jealous.
The entire party right. It's just so funny. It's like, if you lose in November, you're going to run him again in 2028.
You tried to put him in prison. You tried to take his property. And then they tried to kill him. I'm not jealous of anybody that celebrates that.
Who tried to kill him? Ben, who tried to kill him?
A radical young 20-year-old tried to kill him.
Who's they?
And everybody's like, well, I love this the other day. They're like, well, what's the motive? He wanted to kill Donald Trump. That's the motive.
Ben, careful. You said they. They tried to kill him. Who's they?
People that hate Trump. People that hate Trump.
Wait.
That's what I'm saying. It's very simple.
A 20-year-old kid did it, right? A demented, lonely 20-year-old kid.
You'll notice with MAGA, it's always you guys or they, the nefarious, faceless, anonymous villain conspiracy that is brought against Trump, trying to call to that one that they can never prove exists with any actual evidence. They didn't try to put him in jail. A grand jury of Americans indicted him on his crimes, and then a jury found him guilty of those crimes. They didn't try to take his property. A judge found him liable of massive fraud. They didn't try to kill him. A 20-year-old Republican kid did, who was just looking to do a mass shooting, researching a mass shooter before he did it, as well as looking up Biden rallies and when was the Democratic National Convention. It was just by chance that Trump was in his proximity first. And by the way, just, quick side note on the shooter, the PAC that he donated $15 to, that Republicans pretend makes him a liberal for life, even though Trump donated millions to Democrats. And look at him now. I mean, he literally donated to Kamala Harris. He donated to Bill Clinton, and now he's a Republican. But for this guy, he's a Democrat forever because he donated $15 as a kid. It's a scam PAC anyway. So it doesn't really mean much. It's literally been reported that they send out emails that look like bills or look like other things just to get money. Like Democrats have came down on them for this. It's been exposed multiple times. So it's actually very likely that he had no idea who he was sending money to. In reality, he was a registered Republican and clearly had right-wing values. He was super pro-gun. He had gun memberships to gun clubs. He watched gun channels. He was wearing a 2A Second Amendment channel merch when he did the shooting. And he voted in the midterm. You don't vote in midterms unless you're dedicated to the cause. Like, he was just voting for Republicans to vote for Republicans. He registered before Nikki Haley was running, or Trump even announced that he was running again in 2021. So he didn't register to vote against Trump. That's another common talking point you'll hear right-wingers bring up. And voting in a midterm, again, means you're voting for Congress members or gubernatorially. I don't know if there was a governor election that year, but I'm sure it's just some larger conspiracy from the left that they had him do that too.
Donald Trump is someone who's had a whole fake electors plot, sent fake electors to my state of Georgia and tried to, essentially take the will of the people away. He had the Department of Justice in the Oval Office demanding that they sign a letter that with a DOJ header that said they believed there was election interference, and 2 DOJ officials resigned over that. Again, it is so dishonest to say that Donald Trump was normal, or that people are losing their minds when they say he's a threat to democracy. I mean, he tried and went through every single illegal and legal action to overturn the election. And why people are freaked out is because if you have another Trump presidency where he could install loyalists, all of a sudden those checks and balances that Piers is referring to could disappear.
Yeah, it's clowns like Dave Smith and this other goober who just want to point fingers and never take accountability for their own side. They're saying replacing Biden in a primary is taking the will of the voters, even though you vote for delegates in a primary, as I explained. But in the general election, they see no issue with Trump enlisting fake electors to subvert the actual votes in 7 states in hopes to stay in power. In an election, he lost the popular vote in, got blown out by 7 million votes in the popular election, and also lost the electoral college in. It's an asinine hill to die on if you're a Republican. And if this is the kind of things they're going to be running on or saying in this election, I am so happy, because nobody outside of the cult is going to buy that.
This is the problem with you guys going to this well over and over again. It was never actually a threat to overthrow democracy. If you want to talk about people who haven't accepted the results of elections, Al Gore, Hillary Clinton, Stacey Abrams, they all have said these were illegitimate elections, or there was outside interference. There is nothing. Look, you guys are, listen, just hear me for a second. Consider, yes, they conceded. Okay, so they conceded and he didn't. Okay, so by the magical power of saying, I concede, that somehow makes us a democracy and not a dictatorship. You guys are obsessing over this thing that most Americans don't actually care that much about.
Okay, to be absolutely clear on the claims he's making here, Al Gore literally conceded. He was going to concede off the rip. And then again, the state of Florida that decided the race in the Electoral College was decided by 1,000 votes that triggered an automatic state recount per the state constitution. It wasn't him that called for that. The recount then found even slimmer margins that called for another recount. Al Gore then sued the state official who was purposefully trying to prolong doing the second recount just so the state would be given to Gore by, timing out or whatever her theory was going to be. The Supreme Court then jumped in when it looked by all accounts and purposes that the state was going to go to Gore and said, nope, in the recount, it's unconstitutional, because it was a conservative Supreme Court trying to benefit a conservative. And Gore, when he had the actual grounds to contest this, he could have opened court cases, he could have went to the Supreme, he could have done all these things, literally just conceded because he said it was best for the nation. Trump would have never done that. Trump literally had 10 times less evidence than him and opened 60 court cases. Hillary spoke to the Russian interference that very much happened in her election, but she conceded. She never contested the election. She never brought any court cases to overturn the election. She didn't 4 years later say, I won. She didn't say, I'm the rightful president. She just had verbal gripes, not comparable at all. Stacey Abrams also instantly conceded. She brought a lawsuit to change the laws of the election moving forward, but even in the suit that she brought herself, she said it's not intended in any way to overturn the results of the election, because she ran against the Secretary of State for governor. I forget exactly what position she was running for right now. I'll put it on the screen. But he literally, as Secretary of State, controlled most aspects of the election they were running in, and he did a lot of shady things. And she still conceded and never contested the results of the election, never tried to overturn the results of the election, never once said, I actually won. I'm the winner. And notice how when he raised that list, he only mentioned Democrats. What about the Republicans who have been actually convicted of voter fraud? Like Kim Taylor tried to help her husband win the congressional seat. Brian Pritchard in Georgia. He doesn't mention Trump either, because it all, again, comes down to just pointing fingers to the other side in place of taking accountability for your own.